Afternoon. Begin our Jacksonville Redistricting Ad Hoc Committee, and this is our session number 2, and we welcome our committee members back. We're missing one. Hopefully they'll be able to join us shortly. We'd like to recognize and welcome Ward 2 Council Member, Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Jerry Bittner, and thank him for coming out and being with us tonight. And we most especially would like to welcome all those who may be viewing us on G10 or on Facebook or other social medias. And we do welcome you, and you will hear information tonight that will give you further direction as far as commenting on the process that as we go through this redistricting committee. The first thing I'd like to ask the committee to do, you will email from our clerk a summary minutes, if you will, of our first meeting. We're trying, of course, to document exactly how the meetings are run, et cetera, and therefore we're reducing to at least the minutes. It'll become even more important after this because you will actually tonight be taking action. We're going to be not only just voting on the minutes, but there'll be other action we'll be calling on you to do. But at this time, if anyone would like any, are there any corrections or additions to these minutes? If not, I certainly would entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Got a motion for Mr. Spring, a second for Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Moving right along, again, let me tell you a couple of things we're going to do tonight so you will know exactly where we're going. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to hear from Lisa Miller, who's going to tell you all the many ways that the city of Jacksonville communicates one-way and two-way with its citizens. I've heard this presentation, and even I learned something after being here for a few decades. At the end of that, our Deputy City Manager, Ron Massey, will make a recommendation to you as far as the committee to move forward as how to fulfill that third obligation in the resolution passed by council, and that is a public education plan. After that, we will have Anthony Prince, our Transportation Director, who will go over the DOT public input sessions and see if y'all would like to model the public input session that you'll be conducting probably in October along those lines. Mr. Massey, again, will take this and make a recommendation to you, and we'll get your thoughts and see if you want to do that. Then you get into what I promised last time. You're going to really get into seeing some maps tonight. And Angela, got her name here, Hagapin, is a different last Armenian, she told me. But anyway, she will be making that presentation. I'll talk a little bit more about that when it happens, and that's in reference to the downtown wards and keeping the districts or the wards exactly as they are today. And after all of that, we hope to be able to show you a schedule and hope that you will be able to agree to that schedule as far as moving forward. At least it'll be something you can take home and mark on your calendar so you'll know when to move forward. So at this time, as I promised last time, I'm going to stop talking. And I'm going to call on Lisa Miller, and she's going to come to the podium, and she's going to make her presentation on the ways that the city of Jacksonville communicates with its residents. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, committee members, for having me here tonight. Let's just dive right into ways that the city communicates with its citizens. We have a couple of different ways that are very basic: one-way communication or two-way communication. Let's look at the one-way communication. Jacksonville Onslow Government Television or the government channel is what we are on tonight. It's G10 TV. You may know it better as G10 TV. You can find it on Channel 10 on your local cable. You can also watch live streams on g10tv.org. We have meetings, we have programs and events, messages from the city staff and from our leadership as well, all on G10 TV. That also translates over to YouTube. The city actually has its own YouTube channel, jacksonvillenc.gov. You can access that through our website, or you can just search jacksonvillenc.gov on YouTube and find a variety of videos there to view. The third way here that's on this slide is through digital signage. Digital signage you can see on G10 television, and you can also see in our city buildings. As you entered City Hall tonight, you probably noticed the monitors in the atrium, and they show the digital signage there. They also show it's on broadcast on G10 television. So in between a couple of the video programs, there might be 5 minutes where there are some slides that are bulletin board, informational slides that appear in different ways. Jacksonville Connect, let's talk about that. That's a little bit different way that we do communicate with the city. It's through emergency messaging, and it's also through our community messaging. We can target our messages. It's very local. We can target an area down to a street that might say there is a street closure, or that it might be a citywide message about some severe weather that's coming our way. We are on Hurricane Alley, and so we see that very often here. At jacksonvillennc.gov/connect is where citizens can sign up for this service. It's free, and they can receive messaging via text, via phone, or via email. Another one-way communication is through print pieces. We still do print in a large way. If you are a utility customer in the city of Jacksonville and receive your bill in the mail, every month you would receive also an informational piece, a monthly message about things going on in your city. You'll see things in the Jacksonville Daily News and other local print pieces about possibly a public notice or a public input meeting that's coming up, or a public invite to an event. Media releases we send out to our local TV stations and to the Daily News and others about important information going on in the city. We also have a yearly city calendar that we publish, and our firefighters actually pick up those calendars for us every year after we create them and print them out and deliver them to every single resident, every single household in the city of Jacksonville. And here are some other ways that we put print pieces that you might see in and about Jacksonville. You might see an A-frame out in your neighborhood about street work, or a lawn sign that says there's going to be a public hearing, or a message on your door, or a direct mailing. Two-way communication, we can dive into that, and there's a few ways that we communicate in two ways. Of course, in person. We've been doing that for many, many years, via the phone, and also via web and our social media. For public comments during city council meetings, the public can come in and speak directly to our city council and to our mayor about a variety of topics that they want to. It's a very formal way of meeting. They have a specific amount of time that they can speak. And it's also similar during a public hearing where you're speaking about a specific subject. You address city council and the city mayor and our city leadership about certain things. Public input meetings and open houses are a little bit more informal, where you can come in during a certain time, maybe to City Hall, or maybe it's another city building or a public place that we meet, where you can come in and speak one-on-one with city staff about certain topics. We've had things for our neighborhood improvement services, for transit, and different things, where we are looking for public input from the city about the direction that our city's going. In-person communication has been a little bit restrictive for us, obviously, due to COVID-19. So we do have capacity room limits right now. So the city is leaning more towards phone, web, and social media communications. Via phone, if you do not know the direct number, you can always call City Hall, 910-938-5200. That is our main switchboard. The person who answers the phone is a very friendly person, and they'll try to connect you directly to the person you need to talk to. But you can also find a complete list of our city directory on our website as well at jacksonvillennc.gov. We also, two-way communication. This is a great way for folks to respond directly to a post that the city has, possibly on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram, or Nextdoor. We have accounts for all of those different ways that you can communicate with the city. And on the city website, as I just mentioned, there is a staff directory on the city website, jacksonvillennc.gov. But then there's also on every single page on the website a connect or contact us link where you can directly ask a question. And that'll get directed to the person, and they will get back to you about whatever issue that you might have. More specifically for this committee, the jacksonvillennc.gov/redistricting page already has a comments link active so that the public can come in and comment on this process anytime they want. That is my presentation tonight for everyone here on communications with our citizens in the city. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Lisa? I'm sure all of you have done Nextdoor and these different other social medias. I haven't, but again, as I said, this was a learning experience for me. But again, social media, as we have learned in the past several years, is certainly a way people like to communicate and do it very often, and can get a crowd or a group together in just a little bit of time, if you will, on any subject. Okay. If no questions for Lisa, then I'm going to ask our Deputy City Manager, Ron Massey, to come up, and Ron's going to talk to you in this time of COVID as far as what, and let me say again, we were told the council we would do this just like we do the budget workshops, where we would make a presentation and then we would give you an option as to whether you like that or you wanted to modify it or whatever. Now, Ron is our Deputy City Manager, and he's going to make a proposal to you as far as the public education plan that we would like you to consider. Ron, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Of course, one of the missions of the committee is education of the public. And so, what we envision is by using our various means of communicating with our citizens and using, by having the tape of the video versions of the meetings and supplementary information available through our websites and our social media sites, that the citizens that are interested can in fact follow the progress of the committee, submit any questions they might have, but stay abreast. And so what we really are recommending is that we use all those means that are appropriate. Obviously, we're going to be done before the calendar gets printed, so there's going to be nothing that goes in the calendar pertaining to what this committee's doing, but there's certainly things every day that we put on the website that can update our citizens. And we would certainly, after every meeting, call attention to the fact that we have met, and you can go get the information, whatever links. And certainly before the following meeting, we would announce, like today was the chamber board meeting. And at the board meeting, I announced the fact the committee was meeting this evening and that the information is posted, and to encourage all of our citizenry to follow us. So, basically what we hope is that the committee will agree that we just use our normal tools to get the word out as to what the committee's doing as part of our education plan. And we can certainly have any discussions or questions on that. As we kind of post things or find new ways to publish it, we'll come back and tell you, hey, we now have got this on the website, or we're doing this. But we hope you would also look yourself. Just go to our redistricting page, see what's there, see if it's got information that you feel is the necessary information. If we're missing something, let us know, and we can then look at ways to supplement what we're doing. But comments, questions? We basically will use people like Lisa and the other information communication specialists with media to basically push out information just like they do every day about what's going on in the city. But again, a specific focus to the redistricting committee and their work.
I agree with that plan because of COVID, and we can't do a lot of face-to-face. So I'm all in favor of that plan for us.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other comments or questions from Mr. Massey? If not, I'd ask for a motion to approve the plan as on the screen there. Ron, can you put that back up 1 second? as our public education plan.
Offer motion that we adopt this plan as our public education plan for the ad hoc committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Thank you. Again, COVID has changed life for all of us. And I think, again, it's changed how we can educate the public there. Now, the next is also another educational way, but it's entitled Public Input Plan. And Anthony Prinz is our transportation director, and he's going to explain to you how the DOT does it and see if this is a model you would like to use. And we'll talk more specifically about that if you believe this is the way to go. But Anthony, thank you.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. So Ron just talked to you about the education component of our responsibilities, right? And I think one of the strongest themes in his message there was to not reinvent the wheel. You know, let's use the opportunities that are already available to us and kind of meet people where they are. So social media, the web page, G10, these are all things that they're very familiar with. And I think that you'll see something very similar here in our proposal for public input. While the city doesn't really have a formal public input process, we do quite often follow the DOT's example in soliciting public input, okay? They've done this for many years, and I believe they have a very well-rounded framework to collect public input through a variety of different means. Okay, whether it be virtual, whether it be in person, whether it be social media, on and on and on. This plan, framed after the DOT's process, I think will hit all of those bases. But of course, this is just a plan, and we're certainly looking for your feedback to improve where necessary. The cornerstone here is a more traditional approach to public input, and it's one of those things that we feel we have to do. Give people the opportunity to come into City Hall and to talk with us one-on-one, whether it's the staff or whether it's the committee members, about what we're doing, okay? And we plan to hold one session here in City Hall in the council chambers. The date at this point is October 6th, and the reason that we're looking forward to setting that date, and you'll see this in a little bit, and a little bit later in the presentation. The reason that we're interested in setting this date is because we are under a very compressed schedule, right? And we feel that this gives us a good opportunity to set the date, get public input, consider that feedback before we then have to report to the council in November on a recommendation. It's going to be held, that October 6th is a Wednesday. It'll be held from 4 to 6 p.m., so we're straddling that 5 o'clock hour. And it's a drop-in format. So this is not the formal public hearing approach where we fill up an auditorium and we hand somebody a microphone to give their comment. This is a more casual approach where individuals are encouraged to engage directly with us one-on-one, ask questions, and provide feedback as necessary. Now, one of the caveats there is that providing feedback to us, the staff, and then us writing it down, that creates distortion in the message. So what we're going to ask the folks to do during the public meeting is we'll communicate, we'll educate, we'll get all of their juices flowing, and then ask them to write firsthand what their comments are, so that they can be submitted to the committee and to the city council without the filter of staff, okay? And that's, the DOT does that, and it works really well, actually. In some cases, folks may be willing to provide their contact information, whether they have questions, additional questions that we need to get back with them on, or if they just want to stay on an email list or so on and so forth to keep up with our progress. We are in the era of COVID right now, and so the protocol will apply. We are set on having a public input session, but it's going to have to be within the parameters. The parameters are what they are today. They may be different tomorrow, but the staff, you know, we will work with you, the committee, to make sure that we're keeping you up to date on that and we're adjusting as necessary. The whole intent here is to provide an opportunity to tell the story and to seek meaningful feedback on the work that we're doing. So the public input session is just one aspect. It is a key aspect, but it's one aspect of our public input plan. As I mentioned before, we have distance and virtual opportunities for engaging with the public. They have the same means of engaging with us. Home base for this whole exercise in communicating with the public and them communicating with us, at least in my mind, is the city's redistricting webpage. That's where the most accurate, up-to-date, comprehensive information is going to be housed. But there are also ways that we can meet people more frequently where they are. So those of us who utilize social media, you know, you can receive information directly to you without a whole lot of effort, right? So we will be pushing information out via social media, but it's going to be more like teaser information. We're not going to forward a 20-page memo, not that we're generating that, but yeah, I think you get what I'm trying to say here. We're not going to forward a ton of information via social media. What we're going to do is say, hey, this happened, or this is getting ready to happen. Go to the website and learn more. And here's a way to contact us back if you have feedback. So folks who are not able to join us for the input session are welcome to connect with us via the virtual or the distance options. We will have the ability to take feedback and provide information in City Hall. So Lisa mentioned that we're going to encourage people to call in, but we're also going to welcome people into City Hall, again, according to COVID restrictions. So if somebody wants to come and talk to us face-to-face, we'll have them up until the process is complete. And certainly, last but not least, is the public hearing. So council procedure as well as general statute requires us to have a public hearing on this matter. And that is set for the first council meeting in November. During that session, members of the public will be able to talk directly to the city council. And that will probably, depending on how we progress, that may be the final opportunity for public input before the council actually takes action on redistricting. So, if there are any questions? Yes, sir.
That 4 to 6 p.m. time frame, would you be opposed to maybe adjusting that? Only reason I ask, if it's going to be open to the public, 4 to 6 p.m., and usually a lot of people don't get off work until 5 p.m.
Well, I think we're malleable to your feedback. You know, I don't think the intent was to dictate that 4 to 6 is what it's going to be.
Oh, no, that's what I was wondering, if
Yeah.
it could be
So,
adjusted. 5:30 to 7?
I mean, we can certainly, any feedback is good feedback, so we'd like to hear from everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rogers. That is good feedback. And we will, at the end, if we we'll get to the schedule and we can adjust that time, then when you adopt the whole schedule based upon the committee's, what you'd like to do. But that's a great point. You're exactly right. And
right.
don't get caught up on the times. I think it'll make more sense when we actually get to the schedule at the end, so you kind of see how things are going to, we expect them to flow as far as our presentations to you and so forth. I want to say a couple of things, but before that, I want
Thank
Mr.
you.
Massey to thank you. Any other questions of Anthony before he sits down?
Yes, John, before,
Okay, Anthony.
before you leave.
Yes, sir.
You had indicated about the public writing a comment so that their words are not, filtered or altered or anything. Now, that written comment, is that going to be required before they speak or after they speak?
Are you talking about at the public hearing?
Yes, I'm talking about at the drop-in 4 to 6 or 5:30 to.
Really, that's flexible, okay? So the intent, if they want their comment to actually be recorded and considered by the group, they need to write it down. Now, that can occur before or after they interact with staff. That's really up to them. But the main thing is that they write it down so we have a record and can, again, pass that on to you unfiltered.
Right, and one other question.
Yes,
Will
sir.
there be a time limit on if they were to give it verbally, is there a time limit on their comment? In other words, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or?
Mr. Wright, the public input session is really not to you as a committee. We don't see y'all sitting here as a group having public comment. We see this more as a 2 or 3 stations, if you will, with different proposed ward redistricting, and that they go in, well, tell me exactly what this means. Am I in this ward or am I in that ward, et cetera? Okay, well, I want to go and look at this one. And then write down comments. Maybe I don't want to be in that ward for whatever reason. But again, the written comments would be then collected and would, at the next meeting of this committee, given to you to consider. But there wouldn't be a public hearing like that will be a public hearing where they address the council.
Later on,
Yes,
so this
yes.
is more what, educational or?
And
It's a little bit of both.
and to get feedback from them after they engage staff. And I'll go ahead, one of the things we were thinking, it's a 2-hour period, let's say. Whatever it begins and ends really doesn't matter. But for like 30 minutes, there's at least 2 or more stations, I'll call it, where there are different proposed ward redistricting maps. A staff member would be there for at least a 30-minute session and be able to explain, well, this is what this map means, et cetera, et cetera. Here are the cards. Instead of you telling John what you think and then John telling you, you know how that game works.
Yeah.
It gets, so please write down your comments if you like this or don't like it, if you would like to make a comment at all. And then go to the next station, et cetera, and kind of move through. And we will gather all those cards together and give them back to you as a committee and let you read those comments, and then that'll help y'all digest and decide which of the several proposals that you'd like to recommend to council. That's the way it would be. So you would have a meeting after the public input session to come back and to digest the information that has been gathered from that, and that's just one source, the public. The other sources are going to be, we're going to share with you, not that, hey, I like the way things are going or things like that, but if there's information that comes in through social media or comes in on that redistricting page, comments, you know, we told you can do, we're going to share those with you too. So you'll have, could have a lot of information, could have little of information. It just depends on how the public wants to engage you as far as sharing information. But again, that engagement probably will not occur until they see some proposed plans from y'all as far as how the redistricting would go.
I got you. Okay.
Everybody good?
The public input session is intended to be much less formal than the public hearing. So the public hearing, as you know, is very formal, where you write your name down and you get 3 minutes to speak. When someone comes into our public input session, they're greeted by one of the staff members, given some information about how the process works. They go from station to station to station, speaking with staff so that we can, again, tell them the story of where we've been and where we're going. And then generally at the very end, they're encouraged to write down their comments and leave those with us.
Okay, yeah, I understand. What I was concerned about is the transparency to make sure that the public understands each process and each step
Yes.
along the way, and that they are not muffled on anything that they want to put forth. So I see with this process,
And this process is required by the state statute.
right, and that's,
That's another point. It's
yeah,
not,
and that's why I wanted the transparency to
yes, sir.
sort of be apparent.
And just from experience, this is a very comfortable type of format for the participants. You know, sometimes public hearings are a little bit intimidating for folks, so fewer people want to speak up. This really engages folks and allows them to provide the feedback that they have.
All right, Anthony, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to call on Mr. Massey, and of course, while he's coming to the podium, we as a staff, Carmen especially as our clerk, will, once we get to the schedule tonight, the public input session is a requirement of the state statute. We will publicize this so that folks know the date, know the times, et cetera, so there'll be plenty of knowledge of if they want to come and do it in person instead of through the social media means or through the web page. Mr. Massey.
Yes, from my perspective, I see public input sort of 2 phases, okay? The first phase is a continuous phase as we're working right now. In other words, any comments that we get in through any of our sources that we're pushing information out, we will get those comments and we will share the comments that are appropriate with the redistricting committee. So as we actually are going through trying to come up with some proposed ward boundaries, you will have whatever applicable comments that are coming in to consider while we're doing that. Once we come up with the proposed options for ward boundaries, that's when we get into actually having this public input session, this walk-in session. But once we come up with those proposed options, we will also make them available, for example, here in City Hall. In which once the committee says, yes, we like these couple options here, and those are the options we're going to take to the public and seek their comments specifically on those options, we anticipate having them here in City Hall and having the opportunity to fill out that comment form, and that comment form will be available online, we anticipate, as well as the opportunity to, if they don't come into City Hall to look at those proposed ward boundaries, they can look at it online and submit that comment form. So that would be going on from, we would hope that we would have our district proposed or ward proposed boundaries done, by the end of September. So as soon as that's done, we would post it. We would get ready for this October 6th, open house, and we'd collect comments over that period of time. We're going to need to cut those comments off at some date after the 6th, so that we've got a chance for the committee then to come back together at the next meeting, look at all the comments that were made on those specific options, and then the committee can make whatever adjustments at that point. That's what we envision. So, my recommendation to you is basically, get comments in general as the process is ongoing. Develop those options, and then get into that, what I call the second phase, which is focused specifically on those options that the committee sees as the viable options to, one of which will be recommended to the council. And any questions, comments on that?
Thank you, Ron. Let me say this. Many of you may be familiar with the way community development does some public input sessions. They have to do those in order to get community development funding. We are an entitlement city, and so there are certain benchmarks like that they have to meet. Again, there are a lot of folks who are on social media, but there's a lot of folks who are not on social media and want to come, and they want to talk to staff. We want you to be there at whenever this is, and forget the dates and the times and all that stuff on the board there at this moment in time. We'll get to that later. But they want an opportunity to talk to you as the committee members and to express to you their concerns, maybe their pleasure that y'all have gone through this process and come up with multiple plans. Any of these may work for me or for these people that come out. Again, what we'd like for you to bless tonight, if you will, is that you would like to seek public input and establish a plan through the virtual means that's on the board there, through the city's website and social media, but you'd also like to develop an in-person public input plan based upon the DOT model. And it's also the community development model. But that's what I'd like to, unless you would like to make any comments or whatever to get a motion to kind of follow those steps. And we'll get to the scheduling and the times a little bit later, and I think it'll be a little clearer for you.
Offer motion, we adopt this plan, the DOT plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone against? Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, we're going to move now, like I promised, into some map sessions here for you. Let me preface this tonight. You're not going to be asked to redistrict anything tonight. What you're being asked tonight in this presentation is that you consider splitting some census blocks so as to recognize the existing wards as they exist today. Okay? We're not doing any adding or taking away to balance the numbers or whatever. We're just tonight asking you to consider in the downtown section, splitting a couple of census blocks to do that, and to accomplish that. Before each of these times when we talk about census blocks, Angelia Hoggepen, I hope I did right there, is our GIS expert. She's been a pleasure to work with, and I think you will find her to be the same there. But before each one of these, she's going to tell you, these are the guidelines that I talked about last time, the legal guidelines, and this is what we're trying to meet in doing this division here, again, honoring the present ward boundaries in this particular case. Now, you'll never hear her mention the guidelines of you don't pit one incumbent against the other, because you can know up front, we're not going to do that. We'll never ask you to do that. So that's one guideline you won't see up there, but you know we'll always be following it. But Angelia is going to go through a presentation, and this is going to give you a little bit of a putting your toe or your finger in the water of how the maps will be presented to you and considerations. Again, tonight we're just asking you to consider again, dividing these two census blocks so that the present ward system as it exists today is honored. Angelia.
Good evening. Okay, redistricting mapping is the process of assigning census blocks to our 4 voting wards. These are the guidelines that we'll be using during this process. The number one thing we need to do is balance the population. Some wards are over the 5% threshold for the 18,180 mean, and one is severely under. While doing this, we need to try to honor the current ward boundaries as much as possible. There are over 1,000 census blocks in the city of Jacksonville. We need to minimize splitting of blocks where feasible. Lastly, all census blocks must be contiguously connected to blocks of the same ward assignment. They must share a border. What is a census block? The term is a bit of a misnomer. When you hear the word block, you might think street block, a geographic area that is bordered by streets, such as run down the block to the corner store and buy a gallon of milk. However, for the U.S. Census Bureau, it is simply the smallest geographic area for which they collect data. Sometimes the census blocks are the same as a street block, and sometimes they are much larger. You may be asking yourself, who gets to determine census block boundaries? Who makes those decisions? Is it the city of Jacksonville? It is the U.S. Census Bureau, using physical and cultural markers and barriers on the ground, such as large rivers, forests, and streets. All right. Tonight we're going to focus on our first area of interest, downtown Jacksonville. It is a smaller geographic area bordered by the New River and Wilson Bay, and with 2 wards in it, Wards 1 and Ward 3. Let's take a closer look. This is the downtown area with the current voting wards. The courthouse and city hall are to the north, and Sturgeon City Education Center and Park are to the south. The New River borders it to the south and west. We can clearly see Wards 1 and Ward 3 on the map. For visualization purposes, let's turn off the voting wards and turn on the census blocks. All right. You might be looking at this map thinking that it looks the same except some streets are missing, and you would be right. In this area, the majority of the census blocks do follow the streets. Let's turn the voting wards back on. All right. We need to look at the current ward boundaries and assign each census block to a ward. It should be easy, right? Not quite. What if a census block is in 2 wards? In the downtown area, we have 2 blocks with this issue. The first block, bear with me here. Get the mark up here. Is bordered to the north by College Street and Wardolo Drive. The second block is the entire waterfront, and it goes from New Bridge all the way over to Old Bridge. These are 2 census blocks with both ward boundaries in it. There are several options for addressing this issue.
Does anyone have any questions as you go along? I want you to make sure you, because it's a progressive thing. If you have, feel free to ask Angelia, because I don't want you to get lost in this. It's pretty detailed stuff. Anyone, everybody good so far? Okay, thank you, Angelia.
Okay, option 1, you can see the 2 blocks on the screen. The first option is to both assign them to Ward 1. This does not honor the current block boundary, the current ward boundaries by assigning them to to Ward 1 for the option. Option 2, assign both blocks to Ward 3. This option does not honor the current ward boundaries and creates a non-contiguous area for Ward 1, which means a ward island. Remember, non-contiguous means it is not touching another Ward 1 block. And this is not allowed by federal law. Option 3 splits the blocks. The first split occurs along the Thompson Creek, which also follows the back boundary of the parcels in this area. The second split is along the western parcel boundary of the Sturgeon City parcel. This option, over here, I have overlaid the current ward boundaries. This option would honor the current ward boundaries and is the same splits that were made by the 2011 Redistricting Committee. Thank you.
So we're asking you to consider option 3, because number 1, it honors the existing wards. Number 2, these 2 blocks were split, even though they were differently shaped at that time, I believe, but they were split in order to have the existing wards. It basically, if you look up there at College Street and come down the road by the school, and then you get to Thompson Creek, the splitting would pretty much, and I'm not saying exactly, but would pretty much follow Thompson Creek all the way down to Wilson Bay. If you accept this, which again honors your ward boundaries as they exist today, I can tell you up front, based upon what Angelia has told me, because there is a methodology, if you will, as far as how you, when you split a census block, how you apportion the population. I don't think we need to get into that tonight, but I will tell you that last time I told you that Ward 1 had an excess of 297 persons. If these blocks are split like this to honor the present wards, that will bring the Ward 1 excess population down below 100. We'll have an exact number for you next time. Again, information for you to have. Again, we believe this is following the law and also accepting the existing blocks where possible, and again, it's kind of honoring these 2 wards as they have existed today.
Is that moving the numbers into Ward 3?
Yes, sir. That would be moving the numbers. And of course, we know Ward 3 has an excessive large, so forth. We'll have to deal with that, especially when we get down trying to apportion between Ward 3 and Ward 2. If that is correct, they would move into Ward 3, that number of right at close to 200, I think. Yes, sir. Other questions? Comments? Have we made it clear enough for you to understand? That's our goal and so forth. If we haven't, we need to go and do a better job. Go ahead.
The reason this is not an island, because of the Wilson Bay?
Yes, sir, that's correct. The water can separate it. Yes, sir. And that is the way it does today. That's the way the existing ward is. Yes, sir.
Yes, technically census blocks, they try to follow natural features like the New River, but there's many versions of New River boundaries. So technically New River and Wilson Bay, as you can notice, are pink. So that's going to be Ward 1, which is why it's not considered an island.
And if you accept this option 3 that's before you, what we would say to you is, this is set in stone for all other options going forward, because you are now, by dividing these 2 census blocks, you are establishing the wards as they exist today, period, end of story. And again, that's what we want to begin. That's what we want to be our beginning point. So again, this one would not be revisited. The others, as you go through in your next sessions, you'll really get into redistricting. You're moving from here. But here, we're just trying to honor what's been honored for the last 10 years by dividing these 2 census blocks, as I say, primarily using Thompson Creek there as a dividing line. Ernie, you live in that neighborhood. You understand that you're in Ward 3, correct?
Yeah, I'm in Ward 3, and Shoreline Drive is in Ward 3 as well,
Yes, sir.
I think, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, and the thing that separates us is Wilson Bay, which makes it contiguous, I guess.
Well, yes, sir, but if you look at the map, you're contiguous because going up Shoreline Drive, going up the river, going up the Railroad Street, College Street, you're contiguous there. The Ward 1 is contiguous to Ward 1 over here where it says option 3.
Right.
That's contiguous because it's only divided by Wilson Bay.
Right.
But you're physically, talking about the dirt, you're connected with an upside-down U, if you will, something like that. You okay?
Yeah, what I was saying was Wilson Bay, like I live right there where the blue, right there, right where it says Wilson Bay, right above that. That joins me with Shoreline. That's,
Well, what I'm saying is that you're joined with the Shoreline. If you go straight up toward College Street,
right.
then you follow over College Street and go to Railroad Street, and you come down the side, you're physically by dirt connected to Shoreline Drive. You don't have to get involved with the river there. You do, or the Wilson Bay. You do have to get involved with Wilson Bay connecting Ward 1, that is Sturgeon City, and that section of Ward 1 with the other section here that's in the, where it says option 3 on the screen.
Yeah.
That has to be connected or be contiguous because it's divided by a body of water, which again, the law says, you're still contiguous.
This
Okay.
option is exactly what they did in 2011.
yeah.
That committee. They, when the methodology that they used to make that split is the same.
Okay. So what we're asking tonight, unless you have other questions, is would the committee consider a motion to accept option 3 and divide these 2 census blocks so as to honor the present existing wards as they exist today?
There's a motion, I'll make it.
Thank you. Mr. Wright, was there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Any further discussion? I would ask for a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And again, this is kind of put to bed and rest. This will be, again, honoring the wards. What we'll do next week, and again, I'm not through yet, but don't go home. But what we do next week is we'll actually truly get into redistricting, where you will look at different things. Here, like I said, you have now, by this vote, moved about 200 people over into Ward 3 and reduced below 100. And Angelia will have the exact number for you next time as far as what the excess number of population above that plus 5% is in Ward 1. Thank you so much, Angelia. You did a good job.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Moving the excess, which is about 197,
Yes, sir.
according to what you gave us, into Ward 3.
Yes, sir.
If memory serves me right, wasn't Ward 3 one of the wards that was overpopulated?
Yes, sir.
or
That
Extremely populated? So what are we going to do with the extra people?
we're going to have to, and,
Backside.
yeah.
That's easier to do if Ward 3 is spread out,
Yeah.
then you've got little
Just coming off
pockets
the
to push
back.
people off into.
You'll see that what you do with the extra people is you really start talking about where Ward 2 and Ward 3 come together.
Yeah.
How to move maybe Ward 2 over into the Carolina Forest area and accept those people there, balancing the wards as we've talked about.
And they would have to be, Ward 2 and 3 would have to be contiguous.
They are contiguous. Yes, sir. And we'll show that to you next time.
Okay.
Just like Ward 1 and Ward 4 are contiguous. And we'll show that to you next time as y'all make the adjustment necessary to deal with that less than 100 people now. And there'll be several options that you'll be given there. Any other questions? Thank you, Angela. Good job. Appreciate it. Okay, thank you for moving forward. Now, this is the schedule I want to talk about just a moment. We're here tonight at September the 8th at 5:30, and this is, again, where we're, again, learning each other. We're learning methodologies as far as how we're going to go through this process. The next three meetings, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th, we believe should be dedicated for this committee to understand what options may be available as far as redistricting all four wards. Because even though Ward 4 has an acceptable amount, they are such that they can accept more people. And I think you'll see when we get to that discussion that some people from, some of the population from Ward 1 could easily move over there in one or two or three different ways without affecting the character or the integrity of those wards. And again, that's very important. We all are committed to that. I want you to know that up front. Then we'll get, of course, into wards 2 and 3, and like I said, moving from 3, the population, over to 2, which I think you'll see is going to be taking in a considerable portion, or at least a portion of the Carolina Forest neighborhood, and we'll have 2 or 3 different options there. We set aside 3 different sessions to talk about that and for you to see the maps and to do all the discussion and so forth that you need to do. It very well may be possible that you may not need all 3 sessions. And if you don't, we're not going to just ask you to come back because we like to meet here at 5:30 every Wednesday. We will say, if you have got the different plans already accepted after 2 sessions, then we very well may be able to, quote, cancel the September 29th session. October the 6th, we need to kind of set that date as far as the public input session. We need to set that date because we need to publicize it. We need to get the public notice that we're going to have some things done in the next 3 weeks so that they'll be able to see some things on October the 6th if they want to come out to the public input session. Mr. Rogers, Kendrick brought up a good point. 4 o'clock is early for a lot of working folks. We do want to make this a comment. And I think you wanted to make a motion to change that to 5 or 5:30 and go to 7 o'clock.
At 5:30.
5:30
to 7, yes, sir.
Okay, and I'm certainly, so we'll.
Does it have to be 2 hours?
Yes, sir.
Okay, 5:30, 7:30.
And again, we've gone into the plan there. Now, after that occurs, number one, you will have already come up with 2 or 3 or whatever different kinds of plans for Ward 1 and 4, 2 and 3. That will be out there on social media. That will be out there as you go through that process on G10. That will be out there at that public input session. After all of that, then we will ask the committee to come back on the 13th. That's the next Wednesday at 5:30. And you will be receiving, if not, well, I think at that point in time, you'll be receiving comments that we have received through social media and other means, through that web page that we talked about that had a comment session there. You'll be receiving paper copies of things people have written down, and we'll make sure we can read them so that's for you. And we'll make multiple copies of that available to you, so just like you got the minutes this evening before you came, if you got an email with them, that you were able to read them. So you'll be able to read them. We're, again, use your time at home so the time here can be best spent with your deliberations with your fellow committee members. So that hopefully on the 13th, out of all these 2 or 3 or whatever number of different scenarios, you'll be able to say, as a body, as a committee, well, after hearing everything everyone said, either through social media and through the public input session, that I believe that the best option for us to recommend to the council is whatever. And that's what we'll be trying to take Jell-O and make it in even a little more concrete form at that point in time, okay? Then, of course, November the 3rd, excuse me, of course, on the 13th, it'll be a 5:30 meeting. November the 3rd is a 5 o'clock meeting because that's the time the council set. Now, you will notice that that is not Tuesday the 2nd. And our city code basically says, even though we don't have a city election, or to my knowledge, any election in Jacksonville, we always delay that so it doesn't occur on election day. So it'll be on Wednesday again, but it'll be at 5 o'clock. That's when the council will meet. There will be legal notices published for the public hearing, and that the committee will make a presentation, and we'll get to that. The committee's going to make the presentation to council, and y'all can decide how all that's going to take place on the 13th, of what plan you would like to advocate, and to say to the council, we spent however many Wednesday nights discussing this, and this is the plan we'd like to recommend to you to consider. And again, keeping in mind, the council at that point in time, pursuant to the statute, could say, committee, I thank you for the work, but these 6 citizens have stood here in front of us tonight and said they're not really satisfied. Would you take this and go back and think about it again and come back to us? Well, we'll do that, and so forth. But again, the hope is that, excuse me, the hope is that the committee will be fully satisfied and will have vetted all concerns of any citizens, that the council, if they hear anything, hopefully it's going to be stuff like, I really appreciate the committee listening to us and coming forward and being receptive to our ideas and making modifications, and I would recommend, again, the plan that they're advocating to the council, so that at that time, the council will feel free to move forward and to adopt the plan that you're advocating for. And again, I go back to something I mentioned last week, that the real reason for this is so that there is a 9-day filing period that's available to any candidates, that if it's pushed back and the plan is not submitted to, I think it needs to go out of here on the 12th and be received by the Board of Elections by the 17th, then they come down and the filing period is shortened to 4 days, which is a very, very short period of time. So there's several, that's a primary reason I think council wanted the committee to work hard and to do the best, trying to get something to them by November the 3rd. So let me stop right there while I take a swallow of water and get my voice back and ask if there's any questions with the schedule. And again, this is jello, it can change, but the schedule is proposed, making the change that Mr. Rogers advocated for on the 6th from 5:30 to 7:30. Any questions or concerns about any of these times? Thank you. Well, could I hear a motion to adopt the schedule
So moved.
as amended?
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. We have for you, anyone that would like a paper copy of that, of course, you'd have to make your own modification for the 5:30 to 7:30 because we printed it like it was up on the board there. But we have paper copies for you to carry home, put on your calendar so you can make sure you know where you need to be on those Wednesday nights and so forth for these different meetings. I think where I promised I will try to keep you an hour each time. We're y'all have worked all day. I certainly have been here since 7:30 or so. But we do appreciate the time that you're giving to our committee. And I'd like to, first of all, before I adjourn or tell everybody to go home and have a good evening meal, are there any other questions or of anything that we've done this evening? Can we do anything better for you? Okay. And I'm very pleased that everyone came back. That makes me feel good. Thank you again for your presence this evening. Thank you for your interest. Again, we thank the folks who are joining us by G10 and the social media and any other means, next door neighbors and so things of that nature. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having your comments as we move through this process and this committee puts together a redistricting plan for the city of Jacksonville. Thank you, and everyone have a good evening.